everyone, this is Sorry and Target welcoming you back to the next episode in our Retro Carnivores review series, where today we're going to be taking a look at arguably the most different, divisive, and controversial entry in the Carnivores franchise that, for a while, could have been the last Carnivores game ever made. Carnivores Cityscape. Just like our previous reviews, we're going to be thoroughly analyzing Carnivores Cityscape as best we can, from the story's premise and execution to the design, gameplay, overall legacy, and any other elements that I can think of to review. And please remember, all of this is just my opinion. So without further ado, let's begin. So right out of the gate, anyone who is vaguely familiar with the Carnivores series will notice that Cityscape is drastically different from the other entries in the franchise. Why is that? Well, as we discussed in my Carnivores Ice Age review, Action Forms, the developer of the original Carnivores trilogy, merged into Infogrames and was overtaken by Sunstorm Interactive in 2001, basically ending the era of Carnivores games as we knew them. Carnivores was now under new management, Sunstorm Interactive, the company behind the profitable and nearly endless Deer Hunter franchise. But Sunstorm had already taken a shot at dinosaur hunting before their acquisition of the Carnivores IP, a virtually unknown and extremely buggy dinosaur hunting simulator, Primal Prey. In the grand scheme of dinosaur gaming, Primal Prey was nothing. An inconsequential blip in the genre that immediately faded into obscurity. So I imagine that Sunstorm was pretty excited to own a profitable dinosaur hunting property that already had 3 entries under its belt. And so, Sunstorm quickly got to work in creating the next game to take place in the Carnivores universe. And on March 28, 2002, the 4th entry in the Carnivores series was released, Carnivores Cityscape. And man, Cityscape is a huge departure from the other games in the series. New ownership, new engine, new story, new gameplay, new characters. It threw a whole lot of new at us at once. And in theory, that could have been a good thing. But Carnivores Cityscape did not do so well, both critically and financially, even though it did get better reviews than Carnivores Ice Age, interestingly enough. It did not launch a new era of dinosaur shooting content as I'm sure Sunstorm had hoped. Their era of Carnivores ended just as quickly as it began, and then that was it. After Cityscape, official Carnivores content died for years. Why is that? What happened to make Carnivores Cityscape so toxic? Well, as stated earlier, Carnivores Cityscape is a big departure from the original games. The original trilogy games were hunting simulators, utilizing Action Forms' Atmosphere engine that allowed players to hunt down realistic dinosaurs on their alien homeworld. Carnivores Cityscape jumped to the Serious Sam engine, trading the elements of stealthily hunting dinosaurs in their natural environment to an action-packed first-person shooter, running and gunning down murderous carnivores through an urban cityscape. But this new shift in gameplay, genre, and tone was not met with universal acclaim. Back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, dinosaur hunting games were rare, and the Carnivore series was often praised for being a clever twist on a formulaic yet popular genre. But by disowning what made the franchise so unique in the first place, Cityscape was now being compared to an entirely different breed of games, a more mainstream genre that had already featured several well-made and classic entries, and to many people, the budgeted, little-known Carnivores Cityscape simply did not hold up. Alienating the old hunting genre fans while failing to connect with its new run-and-gun audience, Cityscape was kind of just left floating in a void, with very little in the way of variety to keep it afloat. But because of its new focus and gameplay mechanics, Cityscape's story is more direct and pronounced than in the previous Carnivores games. Sometime after the discovery of the dinosaur planet, Dino Hunt Corp had reached a saturation point. Dinosaur hunting was old news, and the most faithful and reliable clients had been, well, eaten. Therefore, in a Jurassic World-esque attempt to boost revenue, the company decides to take their planet on the road in the form of a traveling zoo to show off what their alien world has to offer. Everything goes according to plan, until one of the transport ships, Dino Corp 7, crash lands on the outskirts of Crater City, an Earth colony, unleashing the alien dinosaurs into a civilian population. Basically the ending of the Lost World film on a much bigger scale. Elite military agents are hired to eradicate the saurian targets, but the dinosaurs are more than capable of fighting back. Cityscape's story actually takes place across 2 campaigns, one of the agents fighting to take back Crater City, and the other of the dinosaurs defending themselves in a hostile alien world. And in a first for the Carnivore series, and a pioneer attempt for the concept itself, you get to play as both. If you want to run and gun as an agent taking down hordes of dinosaurs, Cityscape provides you with that opportunity. But if you want to slash and tear your way through swarms of tiny humans as a rampaging dinosaur, Cityscape gives you that option as well. Along with playing as a dinosaur, Cityscape brings another first to the franchise by offering multiplayer matches, a feature teased since Carnivores 2, but never fulfilled in any of the games. Unfortunately, neither of these features helped Cityscape find its footing, but as poorly as this game was received, I honestly love the premise behind the story itself. The original Carnivores games, Carnivores 1 especially, excelled at weaving a subtle story into the environment, allowing players to discover the secrets of the world and have their own adventures. Carnivores Cityscape's story is much more straightforward and linear, and that can be a good or a bad thing depending on your preference. I, for one, absolutely love the premise behind Cityscape's story. It shows Dino Hunt Corp taking initiative, an action that will forever change the course of their company. They had always just been a background presence, a group that operated in the shadows, while you, the client, reaped the benefits of their hard work. Now, Dino Hunt Corp becomes a tragic character, one so desperate to return to glory that they risk the safety of an entire civilized colony, perhaps millions of light years away from any help, to do so. They are even actively featured in advertising around Crater City, which helps to flesh out just how influential the company is across the galaxy, and serves as a really fun nod to the original games. Cityscape finally pushes the Carnivore story in a more engaging direction. It's not subtle, it's in your face, and for the story it's trying to tell, it has to be, and I commend the game for this ambitious effort. I also really appreciate how the story feels within the franchise's universe. I often like to compare Cityscape to a spin-off game, rather than the 4th full-fledged Carnivores game. Most of the Carnivores games, and mods, push the story forward in a linear direction, focusing on many of the same elements over and over again that take place on the dinosaur planet. But Cityscape's story branches off, pushes the Carnivores universe in a different direction. The event itself is major, yes, but it doesn't feel like the next true Carnivores installment. It feels more like a side quest to wet your whistle while you wait for the next big Carnivores entry. And I don't think that's a negative. It greatly expands the story in different directions. I only wish more had been done with it. My only real issue with Cityscape's story is its ambiguity. It opens the door to a fun story, but doesn't really do anything with it. Now, part of that is on the fault of Sunstorm for not following up with any more Carnivores games after this because of how poorly they crafted Cityscape in the first place. But even in the game itself, Cityscape's story ends in a rather unfulfilling way. Whether you decide to let the dinosaurs win or allow the humans to take back their city, you're left with the question, what happens next? If the dinosaurs win, they're not going to just adopt the city, start driving cars, or living in buildings. It's a temporary victory. On their own, they'll starve and die, and it's not like humans are just going to let them stay there. How long until more agents come in, or until whatever galactic army runs things nukes the city? If the agents win, which they inevitably will, what happens to Dino Hunt Corp? Do they recover? Are they shut down? Now, luckily, the Carnivores canon mods answer those questions for us, but in the context of Cityscape as a standalone game, it really leaves players with a lot of unanswered questions. While I do think that Cityscape's story and premise are genius, and I think a lot of people might feel the same way, I also think it's pretty widely accepted that the execution of these ideas is where the game fails. And when they fail, man, do they fail hard. Let's talk about the campaigns, both dinosaur and human. Both of them are incredibly short, shallow, and repetitive. And this is where my love of the idea behind the story supersedes the actual execution of said story, because you really don't do much in the campaign. It's just shooting dinosaurs. Dinosaurs that plod straight at you, over and over and over again. Or kill humans, the same humans, over and over and over again. There are no cutscenes, no interactive environment mechanics, no melee mode, no vehicles to drive, no puzzles, no boss fights, nothing. It's really just the same thing over and over again. And if what you get on the first level does not interest you, then you're in for a slog, because it's what you're going to get every single time after that. Much like the campaigns, the gameplay is also shallow and repetitive. Playing as a human, in my opinion, is vastly better than playing as a dinosaur. As a human, your mobility is great. You can walk, run, crouch, hide in small places, carry 3 weapons, pretty much anything you'd expect to do in a typical FPS. Playing as a dinosaur, however, is clunky, and I mean very clunky. You only have 2 attacks, a regular swipe and a lunging swipe, and the bigger your dinosaur is, the harder it is to move in and out of certain areas because your dinosaur model seems to get stuck, or at least that's how it feels whenever I'm playing it. I do like that you have to eat to regain health, but once you start eating, man, you are locked in and committed to that eating animation, even if an agent is X-rifling the crap out of you from 10 feet away. The level design is also pretty lazy. It looks like a lot of blocky cubes painted to resemble landscapes. The maps in the original Carnivores games felt like grand, natural environments, made up of real dirt, sand, ferns, trees, water, and rocks. The Cityscape maps feel claustrophobic and artificial, like blocky, digital rooms painted to mimic environments. Sometimes that claustrophobia works really well, but even the outdoor maps feel like they take place indoors, like in a painted laser tag room or something. Now, some do hide that better than others, and certain maps are actually really fun and engaging, but on the whole, they're just not that immersive on their own. What's worse is that they're just recycled and inverted for each species' campaign. As a human, you start on one end of the map, and as a dinosaur, you just start on the other end. Which, coupled with the unpolished dinosaur gameplay, makes the entire dinosaur campaign feel like a last-second addition. However, I do like the style of some of the maps, particularly the crashed remains of Dinocorp 7 and Crater City itself. They give off a very retro vibe that hits that late 80s, early 90s feel of what we thought the future would be like based on pop culture. The levels that take place inside Dinocorp 7 remind me a lot of films like Alien or Doom, and the open, chaotic structure of the actual city-based levels, coupled with their unique colors and immersive sounds, do bring a bit of fun to the otherwise boring map designs. Not to mention that level on the subway train, where the train passes through lit areas and you can only see the dinosaurs for a brief second, is really immersive and tense. Easily one of my favorite levels. The animal design is unique, although I don't think there's enough of it. Although I do disagree with Cityscape's complete abandonment of the Carnivores canon style in the dinosaur designs, I do appreciate that Sunstorm at least had the guts to own a completely new style all their own, instead of just lazily poaching dinosaur designs from a hodgepodge of other artists with no thought or cohesion to matching designs, but I'm not calling out anyone by name here. Cityscape's dinosaurs are all designed by paleo artist Todd Marshall, who also designed the dinosaurs in Sunstorm's first dinosaur shooter, Primal Prey. Marshall's designs are iconic for their stylistic flair, boasting vicious, jagged, and spiky body designs, with bright, intricately detailed color patterns. And whether or not you're a fan of his style, the dinosaurs in Cityscape really stand out, especially from one another, which is a good thing for casual audiences. In fact, Cityscape's dinosaur choices are rather unorthodox themselves. Sunstorm could easily have gone with your popular Tyrannosaurus, Spinosaurus, and Velociraptor combo, but instead went a little outside the box with their dinosaur choices, boasting some quote-unquote B-listers that many people may not have heard of. And I personally think that's in large part thanks to having Marshall on the team as a consultant to suggest some more diverse dinosaur options. However, their variety is superficial at best. Aside from their speed, each dinosaur plays identically, and there's only 5 of them. 5! That's absurd! I mean, sure, at least Cityscape stuck to the franchise's name and made them all predators, but come on. I would have taken some herbivores if it meant more dinosaurs. 5 prehistoric targets are not enough, especially when the previous game in the series had double that. What's worse is that the animal and human AI is pretty terrible. Enemies perpetually sit in place, like pre-programmed machines waiting to be triggered into attacking. They're also completely oblivious to gunshot sounds or watching their friends get absolutely murdered right in front of them. They walk into walls, run around in circles, walk into walls, strike unnatural T-poses, run into walls, get stuck in small spaces, and are generally pretty oblivious to their surroundings. Oh, did I also mention that they constantly run into walls? The weapon options are also pretty basic, especially for a game of this genre. There are only 6 weapons, which is the same amount as the previous games, but that number worked for hunting games because they covered the basics of weapon rolls. In a more action-packed game, I think there should be more weapon variety to allow players options in how they want to approach certain missions. Plus, 2 of the weapon options are explosive, and 2 have abysmal ammo counts. So you're probably just going to end up using the assault rifle and then choosing either the X-rifle or the shotgun, depending on your preference. And, I mean, of course, there's, the Cityscape pistol. Holy crap! I'm not even gonna go there, but, whew, man, it's bad. I never got to give Cityscape's multiplayer a go, so I can't say much about it, but from what I can tell, it never really caught on. A few loyal fans still play it, which is awesome, but even back in its heyday, I have no idea if it ever became that popular. Perhaps more dinosaurs, weapons, maps, and game modes would have made it more enticing and increased its lifespan, or maybe it just wasn't fun to play on a fundamental level. But whatever the case, I personally find it pretty sad that the first Carnivores multiplayer experience arrived with this weak of an entry. But it's easy to sit back and complain about what I think Cityscape did wrong. Why not offer some suggestions on what could have made it better? Just like with my Carnivores Ice Age review, I want to add my input on what I think would have made Carnivores Cityscape the unique and exhilarating game we all wanted it to be. As I've mentioned, my biggest problem with Cityscape's story is not the premise, but the execution itself. Both campaigns are the exact same as the other, progressing through a series of levels in sequential order with inverted objectives. It's pretty boring to go back through playing as the other species, and it doesn't really make much sense, especially from a dinosaur perspective. Shouldn't your first level take place inside Dinocorp 7, breaking free from your cryostasis chamber and then escaping into the park? But no, of course not. The dinosaur campaign was clearly an afterthought, so you'll just have to play it in the same order as the Agent campaign, escaping the park and then winding right back up in your cryo chamber. What I personally think Carnivores Cityscape should have done is not copy the Agent campaign over to the dinosaur side and then just let players pick which one they want to play, but instead put them both together in a unique, species-focused order that tells a more realistic and fleshed out story. You'd start off with the dinosaur campaign, right out of the gate, preparing for landing above whatever celestial rock Crater City is located on. Then, as your dinosaur, you awaken and break free, letting you actually play through the breach that crashed the ship. After the ship crashes, you escape through the park and into the cityscape, before the city is evacuated. I mean, just imagine how much fun it would be being able to play as the dinosaurs in the initial outbreak, before the agents arrived. Playing as a rampaging Nanotyrannus or Giganotosaurus, storming through an unsuspecting crater city at rush hour, trampling and eating civilians, flipping cars, knocking down statues, and fighting back against the local law enforcement's desperate attempts to contain this sudden outbreak from another world. This part of the campaign would obviously be the shortest, since playing as a dinosaur is pretty much the same no matter what you do and gets old quick. So you make it as chaotic and fun as possible while you can, so it leaves a good impression in people's eyes. Then, once you've had your fun playing through the prologue as a murderous dinosaur, the campaign shifts gears to the agents, who have just arrived on the scene to take on their alien enemies. And here is where the game really kicks it into high gear. The dinosaur campaign was literally the same thing on every mission: eat people. But the agent campaign actually had some variety, like reach certain checkpoints, locate and rescue survivors, deactivate obstacles, and other unique objectives. This is where my new Hypothetical Cityscape story would more reflect what it currently is, with lots of varied missions that would keep things interesting. Perhaps you would play as a specific agent, maybe Agent Phillips, who is mentioned in the credits, to keep you invested and continuing the story. You could see the turmoil and struggle from Crater City's leaders as they work with the agents in deciding what to do about the outbreak. Deal with Dino Hunt Corp and see how they handle their crisis. Help civilians who have to deal with the tremendous loss in their city. And other emotional story beats to keep players invested. In conjunction with that more fleshed out story, some more diversity in the actual agents and their gear or weapon choices would have been an excellent touch. Building off the idea of the more species-focused story, early agent options could have been more akin to local Crater City law enforcement, quickly and desperately reacting to the sudden outbreak, before moving up into the actual galactic agents brought in to eradicate the dinosaur infestation. Instead of playing as a generic agent and choosing the weapons to take on a mission, I think it would have been pretty cool to see specific agent types bound to specific weapons for their unique roles. For example, you have your generic run-of-the-mill agent packing the assault rifle, maybe a shotgun of sorts, and the pistol. Then you have the more bulky, tank-like agent, slower moving, with more armor and a heavy melee attack, who carries the grenade launcher or maybe a rocket launcher as well. Then you have the sniper, a thin, sleek armor build, with all the built-in vision enhancers and stealth capabilities programmed into the armor. Then maybe a more sci-fi experimental type agent who packs the X-rifle and sports limited shielding that pops out of his armor to protect him from X-rifle blasts and small dinosaur attacks. Seeing each agent individualized and bound to their weapon roles would have been a cool touch, I think, and would have given some more depth and progression to Cityscape's human campaign, especially if each agent was unlocked by completing certain tasks. More dinosaurs would obviously have been excellent, but it also would have been nice to just be able to choose which dinosaur you want to play as on any given level. Now, this obviously would not work for every level in the game. You can't effectively crawl through the air vents of Dino Corp 7's interior as a fully grown Giganotosaurus. But on the more open levels, being able to play as any dinosaur of your choosing would have been a welcome addition, perhaps with new dinosaurs being unlocked after completing certain checkpoints in the story, so you could go back to earlier levels as different dinosaurs and explore new areas and uncover new secrets. I mean, I know each dinosaur pretty much plays exactly the same, but if you like playing as a Giganotosaurus, I hope you also like the last level in Cityscape, because it's the only time you get to play as the Giga. Maybe the game could have automatically taken into account each level's size and build, and given you reasonable dinosaur options based on those parameters. Or perhaps Cityscape could have introduced a progression system on the dinosaur campaign, allowing you to start the campaign as a single dinosaur type, and then progress through the campaign as that specific dinosaur, allowing you to grow and upgrade your dinosaur as you defeat enemies and beat levels. Unlocking upgrades like more health, more damage, stealth abilities, new skins, camouflage, scent detection, night vision, dinosaur-specific abilities like Coelophysis calling in a pack for support or Suchomimus holding their breath underwater for longer periods of time, and more options like that. That way you would be able to grow with and get attached to your dinosaur throughout the campaign. Actually get to use it for more than just one level, and it would give the dinosaur campaign so much more replay value, as you could go back and try it as different dinosaurs, to see what's different and how uniquely each one plays compared to the others. And finally, even if it was never going to be a more fleshed out story or get extra content, I think Cityscape just honestly could have used more polish. Between the artificially built levels, clunky AI, stock sound effects, and just generally rushed feel, Cityscape could have benefited from a few more months in the development cycle. I think I would have been fine with Cityscape's lack of content if what little content we got was top-notch. But because it just doesn't have a lot of stuff, and is a buggy mess, that's kind of like a 1-2 punch to the enjoyment factor. Seeing the few elements in the game really shine and stand out would have made Cityscape much stronger and more enjoyable, in my opinion. To me, Carnivores Cityscape feels more like a spin-off game than the fourth full-fledged Carnivores title. A Rogue One to the main Star Wars saga films, if you will. But that's not always a bad thing. It features a fantastic premise and boasts a lot of cool ideas. It's just that I don't think those ideas translate so well into practice. But perhaps given some more effort, I do think Cityscape could have truly stood out, not just in the Carnivore series, but in its genre as a unique, fresh, and exhilarating game. However, Carnivores Cityscape is a game that I've really come to respect over the past year and a half. I used to rail on Cityscape a lot, mostly deservedly so, and will still probably continue to do so for a while. But honestly, I've really grown to appreciate the ideas, risks, and ambition this game brought to the table. No, I don't think it's great, but it tried new stuff. It brought in a story that really shook things up in terms of world building like nothing we'd ever seen before in the Carnivores series. And looking back on it, it feels so fresh. It's Carnivores in a different genre. It's got its own style and feel, with a fantastic atmosphere and a killer soundtrack. Compared to the Carnivores crap we're getting today, Cityscape feels like a masterpiece. It took risks, tried to be different. I'll let you decide on whether or not those risks paid off, but as far as the ideas it brought forth, the world building it fleshed out, and the bizarre uniqueness it wrapped itself in, I really do admire it. Honestly, as I'm writing this script, I'm really excited to get back into Cityscape and get some footage. I never thought I'd say it, but Cityscape has really grown on me. And even though I don't think it's great, and my nostalgic excitement to play it again might be crushed as soon as I pop it in the CD drive, for now, I'm gonna say it. I do really enjoy Cityscape, flaws and all. I mean, there's a reason that it inspired both the channel's name and the original logo. And despite its mostly negative reception, as with all of the Carnivores games, I do have a lot of nostalgia for Carnivores Cityscape, and there are several things I do like about it. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on what I really like about Cityscape, I highly recommend checking out this video on the top 5 things that I think Cityscape did really well. There's a link in the description and at the end of this video if you're interested. But even though I do look back on Cityscape with a special fondness, it's a different kind of sentimentality than with the other Carnivores games. Because my history with Carnivores Cityscape isn't as ingrained in my childhood memories as the original games in the series. Carnivores Cityscape was the third game in the series that I owned, after Carnivores 2 and Ice Age. I got Cityscape for Christmas of 2002, over a year and a half after I got Ice Age. I remember both my cousin and I got the game at the same time. He was also a big fan of Carnivores at the time, and I remember being very excited to get a brand new Carnivores game. Then all that excitement faded away as I studied the game's box. Where was the dinosaur on the cover? Just an eye behind a metal door? Is that supposed to be a velociraptor? Why isn't it in the game? Where were all the in-game screenshots showing off the new dinosaurs? Where were the clever taglines and huge bullet point sections listing off all the game's features? What was thought to be extinct is no longer. Another world, another time, another test of the fittest. Mammoths and rhinos and bears, oh my! Where was the WizardWorks logo? Where was the excitement? Where was the Carnivores feel? Even at 8 years old, I was pretty apprehensive about Carnivores Cityscape. My cousin and I tried to keep the hype train going for playing Cityscape until we got back to my house, but as it turned out, Cityscape did not work on my computer, which just lessened my excitement to play it. My cousin had a much better computer than me. He could run Carnivores 2 in D3D mode, he could play Primal Prey without it crashing, most of the time, and now he could even play Carnivores Cityscape, so he told me about it over the phone a lot. I remember he said it was different and not as fun as the others, so after a while, I kinda gave up on it. In fact, I didn't even bother to keep the box art for it, which is a mistake that I now really regret. Man, I wish I'd kept that box art. Ugh. Then, in the summer, probably 6 or 7 years later, after I'd already gotten Carnivores 1, I found Cityscape again, and decided to pop it into my new computer. And it worked. And so I set out to play Cityscape. Immediately, all of those mixed feelings I had toward it came rushing back. This wasn't Carnivores, this felt like Alien vs. Predator or something. I beat the first level, relatively problem-free, but then came the levels on the crashed ship. Holy crap! Look, I was no good at video games back then, and I'm still not great at them. But it didn't help that Cityscape's buggy AI, unclear objectives, and generally confusing build made beating the second level in the game that much more unnecessarily difficult. So after who knows how many failed attempts, I gave up on it again. Until that fall, on a Saturday morning. For some reason, I decided to give Cityscape a second chance. And so I finally beat the second level, and then I really got into it. I felt so free to be out of the clutches of that blasted ship, out into the actual city, then the aqueducts, then the subway, and then the final level, Extraction. Except I didn't know that it was the final level at the time. I was just flying through the game, with each level loading up right after the next. I thought I was only halfway through it at that point, that I was about to find more dinosaurs, unlock more weapons, and keep playing through a game that I was honestly really having fun with. Then I killed the last dinosaur in the level, and the credits started rolling. And I was like, what? That's it? That took me maybe 2.5 hours. Needless to say, I was pretty disappointed in how short the campaign was. My internet connection was, and still is, hot garbage, so I did not even consider trying multiplayer. But I did try the dinosaur campaign, and was then pretty disappointed that it was just the same levels in the same order as the human campaign, just with inverted objectives. But I still have this weird nostalgia for Cityscape. It's one of those feelings where the memories itself are more powerful than the actual event the memory is about. I can close my eyes and picture the sights and sounds. The dark, creaking interior of DinoCorp 7. The stone gray clashing with the bright orange sky and neon lights of Crater City. The sounds of sirens and dinosaur roars in the background. It's all great to look back on, but I'm not sure how well that nostalgia translates into reliving the memories. You know what I mean? With the original Carnivores games, I can always go back and play them and have just as much fun as I did when I was 6. But with Cityscape, I don't know. Maybe it's too linear, too repetitive, but I feel that I enjoy reminiscing about Cityscape more than actually playing it. Same with Primal Prey. Those two are very much intertwined in my childhood dinosaur nostalgia. Probably because they were made by the same company, same artist, and feature a lot of the same sounds, colors, and styles. But with those two, I very much enjoy looking back on the fun I had playing them when I was younger, as opposed to actually going back and playing them. Which is a shame. Maybe it's time I give Cityscape's multiplayer a try. Or maybe it's time to give these two a proper, passionate, and well-done remake. So there you go, guys. The brief and controversial Sunstorm era of Carnivores reviewed. I'm really glad I was able to put to words my complicated feelings towards Cityscape. If you're a casual viewer here on the channel, you would probably get the impression that I hate Cityscape. And that's partially my fault at hoping to bring some humor and inside jokes to the community. But that's also not the case. It's frustrating in how shallow and far removed it is. But in hindsight, I also admire its risks and ambition. But these are just my very lengthy thoughts on Carnivores Cityscape. What do you guys think about it? I know it's a mixed bag with a lot of mixed reception, so I'm really curious as to what you guys think of it. I also want to give a special shout out to Anthony Hill, who has been a loyal viewer here on the channel and a very vocal supporter of Cityscape, for sticking around on the channel, commenting on all of my videos, engaging in thoughtful discussions with me, and for putting up with my near constant criticism of Cityscape. Thanks for watching, bud. I hope this review did your favorite Carnivores game some justice. And guys, thanks as always for watching. We're getting really close to 3,000 subscribers, which is just so awesome. I'm always excited to see this community keep growing and exposing people to the Carnivores games, mods, and helping people relive those childhood memories. As long as you guys keep watching this content, I will for sure keep making it. Thanks again for watching, guys. You are all truly the best, and I will see you guys next time, when we take a look at arguably the most popular incarnations of the Carnivores games, the infamous mobile ports.